Please be seated. Good morning. You know, I look out today and I think of last Sunday, and I guess a lot of people heard that I was going to preach today, so they stayed home. But it's nice to have you here. The Transfiguration. This is a great subject for a homily, and I have just 8 points to tell you this morning. Just kidding. This morning's gospel in Luke has so many layers in it. I could talk for some time, but not to worry. I promise to keep within the time limits Father Malcolm gave me. Now, this account is also reported in Matthew and Mark. It's pretty much the same story, so you don't really need to look them up. But I think Jesus was going to show his buddies, Peter, James, and John, that he was the Son of God, and perhaps they should really listen and believe what he was telling them. He hand-selected these three, and as they climbed up the mountain to pray, Jesus became dazzling white and glowing. Remember the detergent Rinso? Then pow, 2 men appeared to them. One was Elijah, who represented all the prophets, and good old Moses, who represented the law. Now, I find it interesting that Peter and James and John knew who they were right away. But these men have been dead for a long time. Very strange. They were talking with Jesus about how he was to fulfill God's plan for our redemption by dying in Jerusalem. Heavy stuff to accept. In fact, it was so heavy for Peter and the guys that they kind of fell asleep. And when they woke up, Elijah and Moses were still there, so Peter thinks that they should ask them to hang around. So he suggests they build some tents or maybe some shrines. All of a sudden, they are terrified when a big cloud comes over them. Not Sahara dust, I'm sure. Then a voice comes from the cloud and dramatically says, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." They must have really been shaking, and they probably fell to the ground in fear. But Jesus goes to them and comforts them and by telling them not to be afraid. When the disciples looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, vanished. But then something else really strange happens, because Jesus tells them not to tell anyone about what they had just seen and heard. Why? Didn't they just hear this big voice telling them to listen to Jesus? Didn't they just see 2 very old dead men talk to Jesus? Pretty tempting to want to tell the first person you ran into about what you just saw and heard. To me, this transfiguration, which means a complete change of form or appearance, but the transfiguration, not only supports the identity of Jesus as Son of God, but when God said, "Listen to him," identifies Jesus as the messenger and the mouthpiece of God. Moses and Elijah used to represent the law and the prophets, but now Jesus surpasses them. Listen to him. What do you think it means to have a mountaintop experience? Well, I hope you've had 1 or 2 in your lives. That phrase has come to mean a moment of significant revelation given by God, or a time of feeling especially close to God, or perhaps, like the disciples, an experience of seeing Jesus as never before. You remember mountains are very frequently the location of significant events in the Bible. Now, the ark comes to rest on the mountain of Ararat. Moses sees the burning bush on the mountain, and he later receives the 10 Commandments on a mountain. Jesus preaches his sermon on the mount. He prays in the garden on the Mount of Olives. But are we missing the point of the mountaintop experience? We see in this story that these experiences are not meant to last forever. When we try to stay too long on the mountain, we miss out on the journey of life that often takes us through the valley. Don't you have those moments when you wish you could just last there forever? Have you ever had a time on the mountain that you never wanted to end? Do you sometimes wish that things would stay the same and not change, or even that you could go back to the way things used to be? Today's story shows the three disciples had one of the forever moments, and one they wanted to last forever. Now, sometime before all of this took place, Jesus was with the disciples and asked them, who do people say I am? Well, someone answered, John the Baptist, and another, Elijah. And Jesus looks them straight in the eye and says, who do you say I am? Peter speaks up and says, you are the Messiah sent from God. Sounds like he finally gets it. But then again, Jesus says not to tell anybody about this. Why do you think he wanted this to be kept a secret? What about telling the three disciples not to tell anyone about what they saw and heard on the mountain? Why not tell anyone that he was just called the Messiah by Peter? You're asking, and I thank you, because I've wondered about this myself. I've thought and pondered this question before, but perhaps this is one of the answers. To keep these things a secret is not an attempt on the part of Jesus to keep people from knowing, believing in, and following him, but Jesus does seem to be careful to keep his identity as divine, Son of God, Messiah, from spreading at the present moment. There are two good reasons for this. First, even though Jesus is identified early in the Gospels as a miraculous healer, it is not yet time for his identity to be revealed. He had objectives that needed to be accomplished before his crucifixion. He knew the future and that it would happen in due time. He had things to do and places to go. Second, Jesus was cautious that a misunderstanding of the title Messiah would have people believing that he was going to be an insurrectionist and ruler that many Jews were expecting. And he wanted to prevent this misunderstanding. See, the Jews were looking for someone to come and rescue them from the Romans. And his purpose in coming to earth was to fulfill the prophets and resolve all the sins of man, yours and mine. Even with those two explanations, I still find Jesus' actions somewhat difficult to understand. But perhaps this is because I'm like Peter, who all too often had in mind the things of humanity rather than of God. The secret remains, at least to me, something of a mystery. But our mountaintop experiences are designed by God not just to give us warm and fuzzy feelings. They're designed to fill us with the Spirit of God, so we have the courage and strength to do the work of the kingdom in the valley. They are meant for us to question. That's the real point of the mountaintop, the purpose of having these experiences. We might want ours to last forever, but they're not meant to last forever. They are but momentary glimpses of glory to inspire, make us question when we fight the battles down in the valley. So may God bless you with discomfort, and easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice and oppression and exploitation of people so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world. Amen.